Roll call? Because it was added, okay, so all in favor with the, approve the agenda with the changes of moving communications to other, B, question 10? There we go, okay, all right, thanks for keeping me honest here. All right, all in favor of approving that amendment to this agenda, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, so we can now move to approve the refreshed agenda for tonight. So can I please get a motion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, great. Can I now get a movement for the approval of the minutes from February 10th, 2026? Vanish Theronot, and I see Wiggs. Okay, so all in favor of approving, oh wait, any changes, discussion? Okay, so all in favor of approving these minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, we are now at the portion of our meeting dedicated to public input. I have only one slip here. If you are interested in addressing the board, go ahead and fill out a sheet and bring it up here. We'll ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes. So first I see Natalie Nagel of AFSCME.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Natalie Nagel. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I'm the AFSCME representative for over 200 Champaign County employees. I'm here tonight to voice concern over the handling of moving our bargaining unit work from the auditor's office to the finance department. When this plan was first presented to the union, we were led to believe that it would essentially involve moving the exact work and number of positions from one office to another. However, it has not been so simple. We had 4 bargaining unit positions in the auditor's office and currently only have 3 in the finance department. The county agreed to file a joint unit clarification petition with us for the accounts payable clerk position. That is a petition to the State Labor Board saying that the union and employer agree that these positions should be in the bargaining unit and asking the board to certify that. They did certify that position into our bargaining unit, but subsequently the county decided their job grade and hourly pay unilaterally. Pay for a union position is a mandatory subject of bargaining. The union made a wage proposal for this position and initially was told by the county administration that they were not going to bargain that right now. They wanted to wait until the current contract expires at the end of this calendar year. After a reminder that bargaining this is mandatory under the law, county administration did make a counter proposal, but it's a proposal that does not include anything about the grade of the job or the rate of pay. We have to infer from your proposal that the administration believes that the accounts payable clerks should continue to be paid at the rate that you set unilaterally. That rate is 2 grades lower than what the accountant position at the auditor's office was. Yet they are purported to be doing the exact same work. The difference in minimum pay between the 2 grades is several dollars, but I want the board to understand that the county administration is currently paying the accounts payable clerks a full $10 less per hour than what the lowest paid accountant was making in the auditor's office. And the accountants remaining at the end of last calendar year were laid off. The only one who remained with the county took a significant pay cut as well. I know this board has many members who have told us and the public that they are pro-labor and pro-union. So I ask you, how has any of this benefited county employees? Maybe you think the accounts payable clerks aren't doing the same work as the accountants. In that case, the bargaining unit work would be performed by finance specialists. The county administration refused to include this position in the joint unit clarification petition because they claim that they are not doing bargaining unit work. This group of employees wants to be represented by AFSCME, however, so they have submitted a majority interest petition to the Labor Board to be included in the bargaining unit. The county, however, has objected to them having a union. They've hired a union-busting attorney and are forcing a hearing before the Labor Board in an attempt to deny them union representation. Again, I ask, how has this benefited county employees? I know you can't answer me here and now, but AFSCME would like an answer from the board. The members of AFSCME demand to know why you support cutting pay, laying off, and refusing union representation for your employees. You know how to reach us, and we'll be expecting to hear from you.
Okay, anybody else seeking to? Okay, great. Can you just let us know your name? Thank you. I don't have a form for you.
Hello, my name is Miss Hart, and I just want to come to the mic because my Uncle Lloyd used to serve here. He served 24 years, and I've never been in this building, but he used to talk about it all the time, and he used to come to my house and eat on Sundays. And he always prioritized cross-party alliances to push legislation or policies, and I just wanted to say that those kind of politicians are so valuable because they often consider they're more effective for lawmaking because they support both sides. And so I like to see a lot more working together on committees and coming together with all the fuss and all the Facebook posts that are negative. I just want to see more things like my Uncle Lloyd did. And being in this room, wow, for 24 years he was here, and he was just an amazing human being, and I'd like to see more of that. Thank you.
Anybody else interested in addressing the county board? Okay, seeing none, we can now move on to Justice and Social Services. Ms. Rogers, take it away.
Thank you. The monthly reports can be found on the websites, the Probation Court Services, January 26, Public Defenders, February 2026, and Animal Control reports for January and February. Moving on to item B, can I get a motion to approve an animal control and impound service agreement with the villages of Tolono and Savoy? Okay, first by Farney, second by Sexton. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed, same sign? Okay, that passes. I don't have any other business. I don't have a chair's report. Items to be placed on the consent agenda, 7B1. Thank you.
Thank you to the efficient Ms. Rogers. Can now move on to policy, personnel, and appointments. Ms. Manage Theranot.
Thank you. The County Executive Monthly HR Report is on February 2026. Should be distributed. The reappointments, we have reappointing Lee Roberts to the Zoning Board of Appeals, unexpired term ending 12/31/2030. Can I get a motion? Sorry, Esri and Mr. Sullard. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You can see the list of currently vacant appointments on our website. We have the County Clerk Fee Report from February 2026 on page 57 of your packet. It's fairly straightforward. Questions on it? I have no other business. I have no chair's report. Designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda are 8-2A.
You're up, Ms. Hannah Hauer Friedman of the Finance Committee.
Speeding along here. Okay, we have A, budget amendments, transfers, monthly general corporate budget amendment report through February 2026. That's information only. Next, we have Budget Amendment BUA 2026-2-242, Fund 2679, Child Advocacy Center, Department 179, Child Advocacy Center, increased appropriations $27,352, increased revenues $27,000, $27,352. Reason appropriation of the National Children's Alliance Equipment and Technology Support Grant. Can I get a motion? Sullard, second by Thorsland. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Budget Amendment BUA 2026-2-229, Fund 2679, Child Advocacy Center, Department 179, Child Advocacy Center, increased appropriations $5,000, increased revenue $5,000, reason appropriation of the Champaign Rotary Club grant for office furniture. Can I get a motion? Vantage Thiernaut, second. Sorry. Any discussion? Crane. See none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Budget Amendment BUA 2026-1521, Fund 2110, Workforce Development Fund, Department 110, Workforce Development, increased appropriations $137,159.88, increased revenue, the same amount. Reason appropriation of the Career Planner Training Academy grant funds. Can I get a motion? Lockshin, second by Carter. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to B, we have the auditor's monthly reports available online through June 2025. We have the treasurer's monthly reports available online through January 2026. And those are information only. Moving on to D, we have the available budget report through February 2026. That's information only. Travis is here if there are any questions about those reports, but that's the second one is the newer detailed one by department. So hopefully you all are finding that helpful. Next, moving on, we have a presentation tonight on the status of the fiscal year 2024 audit. So I'm going to ask Orion Smith to come up. And I think, yeah, there are slides. And these slides will be shared after the meeting, posted online.
Hello. Good deal. All right. So here tonight, more or less to provide a breakdown of the audit years 2018 through 2025. I know there's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of confusion, and wondering where the 24 audit's at. So here I am. So I think the first thing is just trying to provide a little bit of clarification for, I know you guys don't work with this every day, so just make sense of like what in the world has to be done, what's being submitted. So there's a lot of different agencies the audit itself gets submitted to. The three primary ones, though, are your Federal Audit Clearinghouse, the Illinois GATA portal, Grant Accountability Transparency Act is what the GATA stands for, and then your Illinois Comptroller website, but the state comptroller there. So with your Federal Audit Clearinghouse, it basically it's a repository at the end of the day. You guys get your single audit done, which is required by OMB, your oversight board for single audits. So anytime you guys have grant funding over $750,000, you're required to have a single audit. That single audit gets submitted through the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. That's the first thing that gets done as soon as your guys' audit goes out the door. As far as requirements go for submission, it's required to be submitted within 9 months after the calendar year end for you guys since you're December 31st. There are no extensions allowed for the submission to the FAC. Periodically, you might see very rare cases like with COVID is about the only time we've really ever seen extensions for submission to the FAC. Next, you get your Illinois Data Portal. So once you get it submitted through the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, there's some additional work that has to be submitted. They call it the Consolidated Year-End Financial Reports, basically like a breakdown of all your state and your federal funding that gets put into like a nice big Excel spreadsheet. And then your submission from the federal side of the FAC, on the back end, it basically, once it's been approved by the Fed, it gets pushed over into the state's portal. We don't have anything to do with that. Basically, the Fed says, yep, we've okayed your guys' audit, and then they pass it on to the state's data portal to say, yeah, you know, everything is there and appropriately accounted for. Same as with the FAC, you're required to have this submitted within 9 months of your year end. And then same with the FAC as well. Extensions are very limited. And I'm going to go into a few things here a little bit later, but one of the big changes that took place is this data portal used to not exist up until they enacted the Grant Accountability Transparency Act in 2014. And when that took place, it was basically saying, hey, we need to enforce all of our local entities to ensure that they're accounting for all the grant funding they're getting. And so when they did that, they went out and also decided, well, we need to go ahead and develop a website to get everything pushed through rather than paper pushing. Prior to 2018, I believe, everything was basically pushed through via paper until they got their website up and running in 2019. And so then once you get it, those are the two main pieces there. And then, you know, I know right now there's been a lot of frustration with getting grants submitted with the stop pay and all that stuff. Those are your two main pieces that, you know, once you get those completed, then the stop pays get taken away. Everything is nice and good to go forward. However, you do have to still submit through the Illinois Comptroller's website. And as far as requirements for filing, it's always end of August for the county, with it being a calendar year end. They don't provide any extensions, but I've talked to like June Canello over there and others in the past, and historically it's always been a matter of they understand that for the grant accounting that you have until September to get things submitted. So they're usually not pushing for, you know, you to have it filed as of August 31st. They're more or less concerned about, you know, where's it at after September. Okay, and then as far as like when I was here, you know, this is the way the office was structured. I primarily was working on monthly reconciliations, financial statement review, making adjustments, doing all your different, again, your reconciliations and cleaning up the books, your year-end close audit processes, and at the very end, usually staff oversight. The staff, on the other hand, were primarily focused on, you know, reviewing invoices, getting bills paid, and reviewing cash receipts and making sure that those are getting posted properly. I typically didn't have a lot of involvement within like the detailed piece of that unless, you know, they came to me with a question on where things need to get put at the end of the day. So with that, we get to the 2018 audit. So the 2018 audit was due on September 30th, 2019. I came into the position in May of 2020. The audit hadn't been completed at that time. There was a very abrupt departure with the predecessor. Multiple outstanding work papers, primarily associated with like the cash receipts and the capital expenditures sections. At the end of the day, the books themselves, the financials had already been prepared. There were just a few, you know, supporting documents at the end of the day that really still need to be given to them. So I ended up working on that. And once that was resolved and got all the supporting documentation to them, the only other piece to it was the circuit clerk's audit. Due to some unfortunate issues, not to go into details, but there were some health issues with an individual over at the circuit clerk's office. ultimately resulted in not being able to provide necessary work papers that were needed in order to get that audit out the door at the time. And then based on the understanding of what impact that circuit clerk audit would have on how things run at the county, it was ultimately determined at that time to go ahead and put a qualified opinion out there. It means they've reviewed the audit, just they can't necessarily, confirm everything's correct and that there are some misstatements out there. So again, after the circuit clerk's audit was able to get issued, county audit was able to get issued, audit got it sent out the door in July, 282 days late. I can tell you at the time, as far as any sort of like stop pays and stuff, my understanding was, I mean, to be blunt, I think you guys just got extremely lucky when I got here, and because it was during COVID. So during COVID, the agencies really weren't, pushing to enforce any of the stop pay activity that was going on. Otherwise, this could have been significantly worse than what it was. So again, after that was done, the next thing was primarily focusing on the rebuild of the financial statements. So your guys' statements from 2018 was probably anywhere between 50 and 100 different Excel spreadsheets. I could say that my predecessor, she was very knowledgeable and had a really good accounting background. I think the struggles for her primarily were the fact that if you make a change to one of those spreadsheets, you've got to go back in and make an adjustment to 60, 70 different spreadsheets in order to make sure that everything is appropriately reflected properly. So if you don't have it linked up with the amount of information that's going in and out these days, if it's not all linked, then you're just honestly spending a lot of time. It's just additional headache, additional paperwork. So when I first came in, that was one of the first things I did. I took the 50 to 100 some odd files, I pulled them all together into one file. I put it to where basically you could take your trial balance out of your software, dump it into that spreadsheet, and then it would just go ahead and update your financials for you. It's not perfect, but it would get you probably about 80% of the way there. And then at the same time this was going on with trying to play catch up with the 2019 audit, we were also working on the creation of the chart of accounts for the new financial software that was going out the door. Not that we went live with it in 2021, but we were required to have a chart of accounts set up by the start of 2021. So that way they could look into how to develop the software to basically function the way we want it to at the end of the day. And they were also pushing payroll to get out as soon as possible at the time. So 2019 audit. So the due date for that, again, usually you get your 9 months to get the audit out the door. For the 2019 audit, you had until December 31st, 2020. And that was because OMB came out, said, hey, we understand everyone's struggling with COVID and primarily staffing issues. So they provided a 3-month extension at the time in order to let everyone try to play catch up and get their work done. We were so far behind with that 2018 audit that even with the 3-month extension, we still weren't able to get it completed in time. That ultimately ended up being about 152 days late with the additional extension. However, I can tell you 2019 at the end of the day was by far probably the worst audit that I've ever had to deal with as far as bookkeeping goes. Mainly because there were no starting work papers. A lot of the work papers I was having to get were me checking with Baker Tilly at the time and saying, hey, I don't have a work paper to support our balances here for any of this stuff. And they were sending me over the work papers they'd already audited from the year before, just so I could have a starting base to work on getting the financials done. So, and during this time, like I said, going back to the GATA portal, that is when the electronic portal started to play more of a toll into enforcing. Before that, you'd send your stuff in via paper, and by the time the state caught on to the fact that you were late, you might have already had your audit done, and you just communicate with them on it, and wouldn't have to worry about anything. Now, as soon as October 1st hits, they don't do anything on their end. It just sends an automatic notification saying, congrats, you're late on your audit now. you've got 15 days to respond and provide us an appeal of some sort. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and throw you on a stop pay. So some of the things I already talked about here. Again, the automated submission for, enforcing the stop pay, the timeliness of the stop pay, so forth. So skip that. And then again, like I was saying, this is all during the time of COVID pandemic. So many of the agencies at the time weren't enforcing any of these stop pays. They were exercising discretion on their own. And then really after the 2020 audit here, you'll see that goes away, and yeah, there's no more leniency on this at all. Again, I already talked about this, but basically the bookkeeping was just in really awful shape. Even the fund balances, which are basically, hey, your starting balances to say these are your assets, this is your liabilities. At the end of the day, do you have more of a liability or more of an asset sitting on your books at the end of the day? That wasn't even able to be reconciled. So, and so the other piece that I hadn't mentioned yet too during this time, it was a very poor transition of the elected officials in both the Treasury and Circuit Clerk's office. So I had to work with the new Treasurer and new Circuit Clerk to basically start from scratch. And again, we had to get a lot of work papers from the 2018 audit and from Baker Tilly resending us information, basically to have a starting point of, hey, what needs to be sent over to them, what sort of work papers need to get put together in order to support, our balances at the end of the day. None of that was made available for any of the prior years of audits. So limited documentation provided from prior officials. So it, again, made very difficult, and coming in, and I think, I don't know, like when you guys typically come in, like November or something like that, maybe December. So they're already coming in and the audit's already starting out late, much less them having to still figure out things, so. So then we get to the 2020 audit. 2020 audit was issued on time, and the only reason why it was issued on time was because of the extension. Well, I'm sorry, excuse me. I think I got a typo in here on one of these dates. I'll have to double check on that. Anyway, at the end of the day, you guys had a 6-month extension, again, due to COVID, different OMB memos that had gone out. The audit went a lot smoother at the end of the day for this one, after starting to catch on to everything. And after we'd cleaned up 2019, we at least had a starting point. We knew where we needed to go with the audit moving forward, and where to go with the bookkeeping. So it starts to become more or less a rolling impact of, hey, you start cleaning up the books over and over again, you know what to expect for the next month, and things get better and better. During 2020 audit, continued preparing for the full county implementation on Munis. There was a lot of training of staff by the auditor's office. We were spending probably 2 to 3 days a week, which were full day Munis trainings, sitting there with other reps, having to go through, configure the system, or ask questions, understand the stuff, and be able to create our own presentations, own guides, in order to show everyone else across the different departments how to use the system after it was all over with. And then also creating like new system reports or whatever from scratch, like the monthly financial statements you see, like some of the treasurer's reports. All of those had to be started from the beginning. And then we also had to import the historical data into Munis during this time period. Just so we had, again, just a starting point for the financial statements before we went live. Then we get to 2020 audit. 2020 audit, again, it gets better and better. Substantial reduction in, audit backlog. At this point, we were pretty much cleaned up with everything. It was just a matter of just being able to get the work over to the auditors after we had finished it up. Departmental staffing, like there weren't any significant changes between the treasurer's office, circuit clerk, or the auditor's office, so it made things, easier to run smooth as well. In turn, you know, we were able to get the audit out within about 6.5 months from the 2020 audit. Still 4 days late, but at that point, you know, I'll show you like a recap of a timeline here in a bit, just so you guys can see like how it progressively got better. At the end of the day, basically I consider 4 days overdue. At that point, you know, we were finally caught up on our audit and we knew next year wasn't gonna be an issue. So then we get to the 2022 audit. I stepped away from the deputy role in February of 2022. My reasons were just personal at the end of the day. Honestly, I didn't want to deal with the spotlight of the political aspect of being in that office. And an opportunity came up over at RPC, so I went ahead and took that. Prior to the departure, though, the financials were current, monthly recs were being done timely, and year-end processes were all started or at least, you know, completed or getting underway, one of the two. So when I left and went over to RPC, I volunteered to go ahead and still help to try to smooth out the transition and go ahead and train up the successor on my responsibilities, what I was doing, show them how to do the work papers and so forth to, again, make sure that the audit's getting issued on time. And I guess you could call this selfish needs at the end of the day, but, you know, with me being over in RPC, it was important for me to make sure that the audit gets done on time, because if the audit doesn't get done on time, then it's impacting me and, you know, my department. So I get part of this is, again, selfish at the end of the day, but yeah, I worked with that deputy, and with that, she was able to go ahead and finish the 2022 audit and get it completed timely. So then we get to 2023's audit. In early June 2024, after the chief deputy position had became vacant, the person I had worked with and trained up a bit had left, again, abruptly. I was asked to come back and help complete the 2023 audit. My understanding at that time, I was told trial balance was already finalized and had been submitted, which it had. Most of the requested audit documentation had been submitted. During review and trying to work through those work papers and get everything that was remaining over to CLA, there were a lot of work papers that were still incomplete and several work papers that had been completed and sent over to them but didn't necessarily reconcile. So I had to then work with CLA to, I basically had to redo those work papers at the end of the day for some of the stuff. So, which, go back, is why, which at the end of the day was why the audit was 78 days late for 2023. I think if there had been a deputy in that position for the entire year, I don't think this would have been a thing. So then we get to 2024's audit. After my successor's departure in early June 2024, like I was saying, it also became very clear that a lot of the financial bookkeeping was not being done at all. Reconciliations were not current. Year-end preparation had not progressed. While individuals stepped into the role during that period, the staff that had taken over that deputy position didn't hold the expertise necessary in order to complete the work at the end of the day. And I did try to work with a couple of them, but we didn't get anywhere. So, and it just continued to, I guess, spiral from there, you could say. Continued delays within the office. I continued to communicate this with RPC, primarily your CEO and COO, Tammy DeLitzo there. We noted, there were delays in postings of the cash receipts. The cash receipts alone were only getting done about once a month, and that was when they were trying to close the book. Typically when you're posting cash receipts for your revenue and recording the revenue, you do it on a daily basis, or by far the worst, you would do it on a weekly basis. Instead, this was getting done literally once at the end of the month, usually around the 5th or the 10th, somewhere in there, in order to try to get everything posted in order to run the financial statements. Financial statements were consistently late. County typically tries, I don't know if it's changed since I've left, but the county When we were in AS 400, we were issuing monthly financials on the 5th of every single month, the following month. I had pushed it back to the 10th when we moved over to Munis temporarily with the intent of eventually getting back to the 5th, but because of, running everything live, we knew there was going to be mistakes, there was going to be stuff we'd have to fix. So we had pushed it to where we would make sure that everything was posted on the 10th of every single month followed. And, again, get the statements out. And even with that, the statements were consistently being done after the 10th when I was over at RPC. And then, notice there was inaccurate payroll postings leading to unbalanced financials. The payroll entries weren't getting posted correctly for the liabilities to reflect all of the statements correctly. I mean, you can still go out onto the county's website and look at any of the monthly financials from fall of, I think, 2024, and you'll see the balance sheets are just out of balance by I think GenCorp's out of balance by $1 million on certain months or something like that. It's not even correct. And then, there was absence of any account reconciliations. For just using prepaid insurance as an example, when we switched over to Munis, we started amortizing the prepaid insurance, which all it means is just basically, we pay that one large premium at one specific spot during the year, and then we spread that cost out for that entire year because it's associated with the entire year's policy coverage. And so that wasn't getting done. And as a result, I think there was 1 month where you guys had literally 2 full years worth of premiums almost just sitting in a prepaid insurance account instead of reflecting on the expense like it was supposed to. And then the thing that, one of the things that impacted us over at RPC a bit too was the absence of a capital asset reconciliation. So when we submit for grants, certain grants, and then when we have monitors come in, the monitors request a detailed asset listing of all of RPC's stuff. We have historically pulled that from the auditor's office, and that wasn't available or done at the time that the monitors were coming in. So as I was still in the RPC director of finance position, we did try to communicate these issues as well. I would document it and basically tell everyone at the RPC commissioners board meetings on a monthly basis what was going on. Formal communications were made to you guys on a couple of different months here, and then the News Gazette as well. And then in May of 2025, I departed from RPC. My reasons for departure, main one was career opportunity. I had a buddy of mine from an old public firm. I always had joked with him about, if he ever left, just hit me up and, I'd revisit, possibly going back to public accounting. And somehow that ended up happening. So I took a career opportunity with him to potentially look into opening a firm over here in Springfield here soon enough. My other 2 reasons, one was the inability to disconnect from the auditor's office. During my time with RPC, I was never able to actually focus on just doing my job description while working for RPC. It was constantly dealing with bookkeeping and trying to play cleanup and working with the auditor's office on the audits that were constantly behind. And I didn't feel like, with me, again, it's a bit of an awkward situation to be put in when you're working for RPC, which is probably the most reliant on, the grant funding to be most reliant on this audit being done. So I feel an obligation to RPC to consistently help, even though it's not in the job description. And then the last part, I'm just going to complain about a little bit here. This is just me. County insurance for family is absurd. I got babies, and my wife was looking to quit her job, and it was like $1,500 at the time, I think, for monthly insurance for the family plan. Yeah, no one can afford that, so that was my 3rd and final reason. Yeah, anyway. And so then in May 20th there, on May 20th, around that time, I ended up agreeing, so I'm working for Gardner & Company, but I agreed at the time to go ahead and help with the cleanup of the 2024 bookkeeping. Again, the only reason why I'm doing it is just because of RPC. Just to be blunt with you guys at this point. I know how it impacts the community, what those grants mean to you guys, and working over there and seeing, how it runs. That was the only reason why I went ahead and said yes to continuing to help out. Which is weird because it's also one of the reasons why I left, is not being able to get away from the audit. So anyway. So what's happened since then? You guys wondering, where's this audit at? Where's it at? So between June 2025 and February of 2026, the first step was just having to assess and document the bookkeeping deficiencies, where are our mistakes most likely to have happened, and what do we need to do in order to get them fixed. While doing that, obtaining an understanding of what was still outstanding as far as audit requests goes with CLA, and how much work and time is going to be needed in order to be put into those. And one of those things is it's constantly moving as far as the scope of work in order to get those items complete. And I'll show you examples here in a bit. And then the last piece of it's just identifying scope of staff and their responsibilities, who's going to be able to pick up who's competent enough to be able to pick up that work and get it done at the end of the day, and then how much time do they have available to complete that work. As much as I'd like to be able to put a full day's worth of work into, helping out with the county, if I was to be doing that, then I'd still be here. I took a job and I'm, working on other clients as well during all of this. So, we worked on reconciling the balance sheet accounts, key revenue and expenditure lines. We don't do all of them. Not that I wouldn't say it's not bad practice. I 100% say you guys, once you get caught up on everything, you need to be looking through every expense and revenue line, making sure everything ties to the T. We didn't have that kind of time with the 2024 audit at the end of the day. It was just a matter of just making sure we get it to a reasonable spot so we can get the trial balance submitted over to CLA. And then with that came several journal entries in order to get basically all of the accounts that we did decide needed to be looked at, fixed and corrected for your guys' audit. And so again, going back to why is it taking so long? Well, I can tell you if I'm working out on a private company to fix their accounting, they've got one trial balance at the end of the day, one set of books, and that's it. You fix it, you're done. They got maybe one cash account. They've got a couple of receivable accounts depending on priorities of what they want to track separately, an accounts payable account, and that's really it. So it's a lot easier to go there and play cleanup and fix something like that. Whereas the county, using 2024 as an example, you guys, you have a fund, and each fund is considered a trial balance. It's its own set of financial books at the end of the day that has to be reconciled and balanced separately from all of the other trial balances. So you guys have 75 trial balances. So again, think of it as 75 different companies that you're having to reconcile for. And then in addition to that, you've got your balance sheet side. You've also got all your different income statement accounts, which in total you guys had a little over 16,000 accounts that were sitting out there when I last ran the trial balance. So that's one key piece, is just basically how your guys are big. You're a big entity at the end of the day, and it's not easy to just turn around and say, oh well, this is an easy fix, because it's just not. And then you've also got the complexity of the journal entries because of all of these different trial balances and the way one entry can impact a different fund. So you can have one journal entry that might impact 10 to 15 different funds, and you have to do journal entries across all of those funds in order to appropriately reflect the books. And again, I'll get to an example here in a minute, but basically get all of those books balanced. And each correction, it's got to be supported, it's got to be reconciled and documented. So this was one of our examples that we had. So I worked with, I don't know if I should even say her name. I worked with an individual who had came onto the county, I guess, middle of last year. Fortunately, she's extremely competent in her bookkeeping abilities and being able to do bank recs. But I do want to paraphrase that. Sorry, going back to this slide real quick. I want to paraphrase. It feels like when you guys hear reconciliation, you just think cash at the end of the day. And I hear that a lot, that you guys just assume cash is the only thing being reconciled at the end of the day. And that's not. You've got your accounts receivable, you've got your prepaid, you've got your liability accounts saying, hey, who do you owe what? You've got your equity accounts, a reconciliation of like different state funding, different property tax funding that's coming in. Those are all done completely separate from one another. And so when you're hearing reconciliation, don't immediately think cash, because again, there's a bunch of reconciliations. Reconciliation is just used as a way to say, hey, you're looking at one particular balance and justifying what makes up that balance. But for the example that I had chose here, you had your 2024 General Corp Bank Rec that I ended up working on, doing all 12 months worth of recs. And so it consists of 3 funds of your 75 county funds. The way you guys have your fund set up, you've got a highway, you've got your trust and agency, which is like all of your different special revenue funds that are restricted by some sort of state statutes or federal statutes. And then you've got your general corp, which is like your CARF and your main 1080 account that you guys see quite often. So when I was going through reconciling just those 3 funds, those 3 funds are, the cash is deposited into 3 different checking accounts, 3 different investment accounts. And they do have their purposes. Like, I know like one of the Illinois funds, you're asking like, maybe why do we have 3 investment accounts? Well, one of those investment accounts is like an Illinois funds, gosh, I'm losing it. I'm thinking of the trust and agency now. Sorry, I'm a little sleep deprived too right now. But I'm thinking, basically, they serve their own purpose. They might have been set up associated with tracking of the bonds. You guys have an Illinois funds money market account that you use to get a little bit better interest. And then you might have some other investment mechanism that maybe was set up by the treasurer to, again, maybe get a little bit more interest. They all serve their purpose, but at the end of the day, the money's all the same. It's all associated with 1080, and so it all gets grouped in to the same reconciliation. And when I was doing this, the misstatement identified on your guys' statements for the county financials, you overstated cash by about $25.5 million at the end of December. So like if you were to go out there, I don't know if it's going to tie to the penny to like the monthly statements you've uploaded online, because it's constantly changing based on when that cutoff was done. But the financials at the end of the day were showing $46 million in cash, and you guys had only about $21 million in the bank at the end of the day. And then, so then it's a matter of, as part of that reconciliation, we've identified, hey, there's this $25 million gap. What's it associated with at the end of the day? Like what are all these individual entries that make this up, and why are we off by so much? And in the particular case of the General Corp, using it as, again, as the example here, it was off by almost $18 million because there was no reconciliation done between the cash and the investment accounts for your General Corp. So if you were to go out, look at your monthly statements for investments, you would see your investment accounts have a deficit of almost $18 million out there at the time. And then, so once that got cleared up, luckily you guys weren't missing $18 million. It's just, the entries needed to be fixed is all. The other piece of it, the closeout of your receivables hadn't been completed yet, so that was about $7.8 million. Typically, and not to get too much into the details, but you guys have your cutoff, which is the end of February. You guys have 60 days that you say, hey, if we receive revenue or expenses associated with last year's books, we go ahead and we record it to last year's books. And then as part of that process, the way Munis is set up, when you're recording revenue, it records to last year's books to the proper revenue lines, but it also hits cash. And we don't really have the cash right in December. The cash was a receivable. We were expecting to receive it in January and February. So an entry gets made to basically reclass that 7.8 million from cash to the respective receivable accounts, whether it's due from state, due from the Fed, due from, you know, some other John Doe walking down the street. You know, at the end of the day, it shouldn't be in cash, so we move it to receivable. And then the last notable piece there was there's about $104,000 worth of funding that required just a transfer between the trust and agency and the highway account. Just funding that, you know, when the cash receipts were originally done and the deposits were made, accidents happen throughout the year, you know, so sometimes, you know, money doesn't get put in the proper bank account. So this was a cumulative of the entire year, basically saying, hey, in total across the whole year, there's about $103,000 worth of funding that was associated with the trust and agency and the highway funds that did not get put in the correct account. So then transfers have to be made without any sort of bookkeeping adjustment to move that to the correct bank account at the end of the day. And so then I just, again, not to bore you guys to death here, but to show you like an example of, again, why it does take the time it does to make sure the books are correct. This was just the recorder activity that went in and out during the 2024 year that didn't get recorded. So throughout 2024, again, there were several items that didn't get recorded within general court, but these were the ones specific to county recorder that either money had went in or out of the bank for First Financial, and it was associated with the county recorder's account, and the activity didn't ever get recorded at the end of the day. And the thing that kills me about, not to rant here too, the thing that kills me about county books as well and government in general is, you know, if this is like a private entity where I see John Doe is working on his farm and, you know, he's off by $20 on his financials at the end of the day, I'm telling him to push that through miscellaneous expense and we're done with it. I'm not wasting time with, you know, was it associated with fuel cost or office supplies or, you know, any of these other expense lines or revenue lines where you just flush it and be done with it. Unfortunately, you can't do the same thing when you're working in the county. County, you've got strict state statutes that say, hey, or in federal statutes that say, hey, you've received this funding, it's got to be used for a specific purpose, so you need to make sure you've recorded it in your books appropriately. So in this case, yes, these are a bunch of small little piddly dollar amounts, but they do have to be recorded correctly at the end of the year. And so what does that look like? That entry on the left is after staff go in and individually identify where it should have been individually recorded to for each one of those, you know, deposits or the chargebacks that took place. All of those individual lines. And so then what we do is we say, okay, well, that's all the individual detail there on the left of, you know, where the activity needs recorded. Then we have to summarize it. Well, we don't have to summarize it, but I'm lazy. I'm not going to enter 35 some odd lines of data when we can just enter 4 lines when we're entering it into the system. So that data gets summarized. We say, hey, this is the correcting entry to get it fixed. And that's the top right for it. Basically just saying, hey, that's the correct general corp side of things. And then down at the bottom right, the catch is to this, and this is what always throws another wrench into the whole situation, is you'll see there's a due to other funds account for $8 on there. Well, that $8 is saying, hey, we owe one of those special revenue accounts that, again, are restricted by statute. So we have to make sure that they get their fair portion of the cash, or we reduce it for cash that they should have never received at the end of the day. So then that required 2 additional, you know, entries associated with the correction on the books there at the end of the day, associated with it. So really that's where we're at with 2024. You know, I know, like, you guys still looking for a timeline as far as when will the audit get done. You'll have to speak with Travis on that or whatever in his communications with CLA. I can't really provide you anything there other than, you know, at this point, you know, the trial balance has been submitted over to CLA. So then we get to our 2025 audit, just stepping back a bit as well too. You know, your 2025 audit's already coming due as well at the end of September. Not complete, not started. Primary goal at this point, obviously, to get the 2024 audit out the door. And you're going to see from the next slide here, but A lot of it's just taking time to realize that it's going to take a little bit to correct what's been done incorrectly this whole time. So as of right now, I've worked with Travis and his office there to really stop the bleeding at this point. We've discussed, how to handle your cutoffs at the end of the year to ensure that people are recording their revenue and their expenses to the right set of financials at the end of the day. And the more that's done appropriately or done correctly, I guess, at the end of the year, it results in less mistakes and, obviously less journal entries and corrections that need to be made there. So. And so then the last slide, just kind of wrap it all up here again. So I stopped with 2024. I could have gone on forever, obviously. But your 2024 audit was your first year that you guys switched over to a calendar year end. Prior to that, you guys had a November year end, which is fairly common for a lot of government entities. I can't tell you what the rhyme or reason was to do calendar year end, but it makes sense and still works at the end of the day. So is what it is. But you'll see on here, I don't have a little pointer or anything. You'll see 2014, 2015 were fine. And then it slowly starts to creep up. We get to our 2018, which is, again, the worst part of it. And then things started to get better. You'll see with the 2019 audit, we got that 3-month extension, and then we got a 6-month extension for the 2020. However, had it not been for those extensions, I would say more or less just look at that days late on the left. I think that's more representative of how the audits are actually going rather than trying to rely on what the extensions were saying. That's really all I got at the end of the day. Like I said, basically things were cleaned up by 2021, 2022 stayed consistent, and then just it starts to fall off again at 2023. So my favorite slide here. Questions?
Thank you so much. We are definitely going to open it up for questions here. So if you need a chair at some point, maybe Travis can.
Yeah, sure. My leg was falling asleep earlier sitting in the back, but yeah.
Okay, I see a lot of hands. We'll go Carter, Rodriguez, Pugh for now.
Could we have a point of order, like a reminder of what the subject is that we're discussing on the agenda right now?
Yes, the audit. But yes, thank you. Let's stay to topic.
Question, and I will follow that up with a comment. Are you still employed by Champaign County?
No. I'm employed through contract with Gardner and Company. My contract that I signed on with Gardner when I started, it doesn't allow me to do any sort of work outside of, like I can't even get a job at like McDonald's or work at Walmart. My contract says, hey, they pay me well enough that I'm to do and devote all of my time to them. So in order for me to be able to help you guys and do work at the end of the day, you guys signed a contract through Gardner and Company. You're not actually working with a bunch of other people, though. At the end of the day, you're just working with me. I'm the only individual over there that, is available.
And you've been employed through the county this whole time since, what was your start date?
So I signed on with the start date was May 20th, where you guys signed the contract. Yep.
Okay. So my comment is this. There has been a lot of mess with this county board where I've seen them play as the bully, and they've intentionally caused this conflict. So it's really sad that it's gotten to this point because it is a big job to do. And to say that it's always on the auditor, no, the auditor has employees within the office that also takes care of work, correct? Right. And so for us to go from issues with the audit and then come back behind and hire you to do work just absolutely makes no sense to me at all, because there were already identified issues within that office, correct?
When you say identified issues within the office, you mean?
There wasn't monies that were recorded properly while you were in the office, correct?
So I worked with RPC for about the last time's a blur, and honestly, I'm kind of happy it's a blur. RPC, I worked with them for about 2.5 years prior to my departure. The books, everything was caught up and complete before I started my position with RPC.
In 2023, correct?
Is that what it said on the slides? Like I said, it's a bit of a blur for my time here for the county. But
I think it was 22, you said you.
22?
February 22.
okay.
Right. And I
Yeah.
just think that, this board didn't realize to the extent why they were bullying the auditor, making it the environment very toxic for the auditor and his employees. They didn't realize how big of a mess they created. And it's just really sad because the constituents of this community is basically going to pay, for the consequences of these board members. I want to commend you for leaving, because I know it's a toxic environment that they've created, and then these are the consequences. So good luck. Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez.
That's quite a take. My question is, it's my turn, Ms. Carter, thank you. My question is, and I say this having just gone door to door on Sunday, right? We know our constituents care about the state of this audit. It occurs to me the way that you phrased it, it seems like, the audit gives us a snapshot in time of what we're doing with our budget and our finances, how things are coming in and going out. What I'm hearing you say, and please let me know if this would be accurate. The last time that we, as county board members, on average, were able to speak to our constituents about the state of our budget was 2022. Is that correct? Or a fair statement?
Yes, I would say like Tammy and Travis as well, when they're doing their forecasting, they do try to take into consideration, that there are those misstatements out there on the financial statements. So I can't necessarily say, you guys are working with, inaccurate information at the end of the day, but I would say that your financials at the end, yes, they were the cleanest back in 2022 was the last time they were in a decent spot. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell me, you've been doing this for, with our finances for, nearly a decade then at this point total? Is that correct?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So, do you have many points of comparison? Like, is this a common set of problems? What you've described as the state of our audit, is this common among other counties?
No, not at all. I don't work in government as of right now as well, just FYI. Other than, doing some bookkeeping work for you guys, I'm primarily ag and co-ops. However, back when I used to work with CLA, I did work on some government entities as well, and this was never a thing. You'd walk in on day one of an audit, everything would be clean, and you just go about doing your, audit and get out of there. Very rarely were there instances of governments, entities having issues, nearly as bad as this, I guess, but yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. And thank you for your service to the county for the many years. I do appreciate it, so thank you. First question I have is, we hired you back in May, but I don't see your company billing us until like November or December. Mm-hmm. Was there any work during that time? I think it was billed for a few meetings and whatnot. Was there any work done by you or your firm during that time?
Yeah, so a lot of that was reconciliation of like your guys' accounts payable, your due tos and due froms. It's a very long ongoing process. It's not just, hey, I start with the due tos, due froms, finish it in a day or two, and then jump to the next thing, because it's all a bunch of moving parts. So during that time, though, I primarily worked on the bank recs. At the end of the day, if your guys' cash isn't reconciled and you don't know what your balance is for cash, we can't say, for certainty if anything's reflected appropriately within your expenditures or your revenue lines.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah.
Okay. So at that time, could you see issues and problems arising from like May on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, okay. And it's a trickle effect. Like initially, you start out, you think, how I go in with the mentality of like, how bad can things be or get? And, initially I was thinking, hey, I have familiarity with the fact that I've already done the bank recs for like 2019, 2020, 2021. So I knew that at the end of the day, the worst comes to worst, I could always start from where I left off. Unfortunately, even with doing that, there was still so much that was unrecorded that, it just takes time, I guess, to get all those entries corrected. Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking that is because if you knew, I'm assuming Travis and the county executive's office knew at that time too, that you reported that to them?
That things were getting worse and worse, or?
That there was already a lot of issues happening, that things were getting worse?
I probably wouldn't have known that until, I'd say probably October, give or take.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that I didn't sign on with you guys until the end of May.
Yeah, no, I get that too.
I didn't look into your guys' financials until during June was basically just us trying to understand what all was not done. Is a simple way to put it. What recs weren't done, what things were still outstanding from CLA prior to me coming in to help out. It's not until you actually dig into those work papers that you truly get an understanding of like how bad some of the stuff can be. And to preface it, like the other piece that becomes an issue as well is, so I'm reconciling cash, for instance, to start out with. If I get cash completed, at the end of the day, my mind's telling me, well, if cash is correct, expenses and revenue are reflected appropriately from all the bank statement activity. So I tell myself, I guess, how much worse can it get? And then I jump on to the next section, which is going to be like your payables. And then when I look at the payables, it's a matter of, again, doing kind of the same process of, well, how bad can it be? So I can't necessarily take a quick glimpse at each one of the sections and say, oh, well, these are just so bad that, that there's, I can't give you a scope of time or anything like that. It's a matter of just taking it section by section to be able to really tell you, like, I'd have to spend several hours to be able to look at it, be able to tell you how bad it really is. Yeah.
No, I get that too, because I believe we hired Jill Stewart at the same time, and for about 5 months there really wasn't a lot of work done or really delving into it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I get. Please keep.
Oh, so I don't want to interrupt it all either.
Oh yeah, please.
I guess the only other piece I would say to that too is, I wouldn't get caught up or reflect on my hours during that time period compared to what was done. A lot of the work that was done in the fall was primarily from the administrative office. And it's as simple as, really, how much do you guys want me to bill you at the end of the day, right? You don't want me doing a lot of, and excuse the language, you don't want me to do grunt work at the end of the day and a lot of data review. Using that one as an example there for like your recorder, county recorder. I could go through each one of those and look in Munis and identify where those journal entries need to happen at. But for me to do it, I'm probably looking at another 3-4 hours of my time just with that one entry that I would be billing you. So a lot of it is just saying, hey, here's where all your variances are at, and then letting the admin staff look at them and say, well, we know this is what it's related to, and provide the adjustments or prepare the adjustments for it. If that kind of makes sense too with it. More or less, I'm basically saying, hey, here's all your discrepancies. You guys need to fix this before you can push your financials through. And so then Travis and his crew look at it and say, okay, well, we need to dive into this further. And then that's when they're identifying where the account strings are at that need to be fixed. So.
No, I get that. 1 second, I got to find it here. Oh, here we go. Now that you're working with the county more and doing more stuff, have you seen that we've put any policies or procedures in place now so this does not happen again in the future?
I'd have to think on it. Well, and I guess I don't fully understand how the county is structured with it and what would be, what would be a reprimand at the end of the day. For me, I always think of it as just like private industry. If I'm working at a grain elevator and John Doe, who's doing the bookkeeping, if they're doing a poor job, at the end of the day, that grain merchandiser is going to can them and bring someone else in, and it's as simple as that. Like you guys can't really do that with your officials, and so I don't know how that plays into, at the end of the day, you guys need a way to be able to say, hey, holding everyone accountable, and it's much more difficult other than just going through an election process. You can't just say, hey, you guys are doing a horrible job, we need to find someone else. If that, I'm not giving you a real answer here with it, but
you're fine.
I don't have an answer for you on that.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
And this question is going to sound rude, but it's not because it leads to a different question. This is from a constituent too. How many hours have you put in on this presentation?
So I've done all this pro bono, and
How many hours was it, though, would you say, of your time?
maybe about an hour and a half.
Okay, that's
yeah.
good. Because the follow-up question was from a constituent is, why are you doing this presentation and not one of our new financial staff that we hired? And that was a question there from them.
I can step in here. Orion Smith has the institutional knowledge to be able to talk about what was going on back into 2018 and has been in the unique position of having worked directly on these audits. So
No, I get that.
that's why
I think
he's here.
I think their point was the fact that we hired a whole bunch of people and we're paying them, so. And the last question for Jim.
Other people do have questions, Mr.
One
Pugh,
last question.
so
That's
can
it.
we can
It's
come back to you. You can have another
No, I'll
another
do the last
chance.
question. It's okay. A minute.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. From Jim, would a county executive that actually knows Munis a little bit be helpful in this process, do you think?
Sorry, was that directed to me?
That is
I
directed
zoned
to
off.
you.
What was the question again?
Would a county executive that knows the system of Munis a little bit be helpful in this process for the audits? Would you say yes, no, maybe?
You're saying what would I expect him to be doing throughout the
No,
audit
no, no.
process?
That a
or-
county executive that would know about Munis somewhat, would he be helpful in the audit?
Oh, I think anyone who's working on the audit should know how to use Munis, yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
And does the county executive work directly on the audit? No. Okay, we have other, Lakshan and then Furtado. Sorry.
Mine is quick. I'm just trying to clear up my timeline. I was taking notes on here. You said you started with Gardner and Company working on our audit in May, but you also worked on our audit while not employed by the auditor's office. For which audits was that?
All of them.
No, you were employed by the auditor's office, but was it
Yes.
23 and 24, would that be the 22 and 23 audits and now the 24 audit?
So, which one was the? Do you have the slides in front of you by chance? Or
No.
whichever one was 4 days late would have been my last audit at the auditor's office.
Okay, so yeah, the 22, but you did work on the 2022 and 2023 audits while you were employed with RPC
Yes.
and outside, and then now Gardner and Company. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Furtado.
Just a little bit more, because I lived a lot of this. So I just want to make sure that we understand his role and the timeline. The 2018 and 2019 and 2020 audits were disasters, right? I'll give you just one really quick example. In and I'll be blunt, I tried to give the auditor, and I think I gave him too much of a benefit of a doubt, because part of the issue was that we had a big turnover in the treasurer's office, and that impacted reconciliations in particular because of lack of timeliness on recording revenue. So because I'm weird, and I can read of any of these financial systems from previous jobs I've had. So I said, hey, look, like if you give me read-only access, I could look at this, right? So I was coming in right before the pandemic in 2020 into the auditor's office. They set me up with a computer. They gave me read-only access to the books, and they said, hey, start with highway. This is simple. And all I was doing was bank recs. And I wasn't even doing the bank recs. I was just looking at literally bank, statements for this one account, and then looking at what was on the screen and being like, okay, so this bank statement says for this account, this is what we did. And I was looking at the screen and I'd be like, well, that's $73,000 off for the month of June. And I just had a little Excel spreadsheet, and I would be like, June 2018, $70,000 off, right? Then I would go to July, and that would be like in our favor. And it would be $14 negative, right? Every single month was off. Not one of them was right. And then the pandemic happened and I couldn't come into the office anymore. And I was like, and so like I was talking to the person was still there that was the deputy before you. And I was talking to her and I was like, I don't even understand, like, how do you figure this out? And she's like, okay, well, that $70,000 that is in this account should have gone somewhere else. So now we have to figure out where the heck else it should have gone. Do you see what I'm saying? And so if you understand the timeline that we just talked about, right after that is when Orion came in, helped us clean up that mess, and like slowly dug ourselves out of it, put in processes into place, right? And got us out of it. Then he left, helped train up the next person in order to make sure that they were done, you know, like that they knew what they were doing. That person left, and then the wheels completely fell off the bus. At that point, when those wheels were all the way like off the bus and rolling down the street, is when we asked Orion, you know, from RPC to come in and help us do that next audit. And during that time, I sat in on the calls. I sat in on, I think, 3 separate either Zoom calls or phone calls with the outside auditor going through, okay, here's the 17 outstanding steps, right? And I would sit there for an hour and a half. And I'll be perfectly blunt, I understood like 1/5 of what they were talking about, right? Because I am not a financial person by trade. But what I can tell you is during that entire time, for all intents and purposes, Orion was acting as the auditor of this county because all of the questions were directed at him, all of the answers came from him. I remember one phone call that I was on, it was maybe a 2-hour phone call. In that entire time, our auditor gave one suggestion to how to solve one of the outstanding issues for our 2023 audit, and the outside auditor immediately shut him down, said that solution would not work, that would not be acceptable. Here's what you actually have to do. He stopped talking, and the rest of the time. So when I say that we owe Orion a debt of gratitude, and the staff in the administrative office a debt of gratitude, I don't think, like, what he just described is 16,000 instances of where things were put in wrong that they had to figure out and fix. Yes, we are in a terrible situation. I also want to make sure, like, when you were talking about, like, is this ongoing? All of what we're talking about was in 2024, before the move happened, right? So it is going to be that bad for at least half of 2025. And if I seem aggravated, it is because I came to this body, I came to the newspaper, I came to the League of Women Voters, I went on the radio station, I talked and talked and talked and talked about what was happening and how bad it was. And it is not as if it was bad for a year. It has been bad since 2018 for a very brief amount of time. We were fortunate in that we made a hire that helped us dig out of it when that person left. And so, like, I want us to understand what this timeline means. I mean, we have had, the only thing that saved us was the COVID. And let me be clear, COVID had nothing to do with why our books were so out of whack. That just came in and kind of saved us. Just like the COVID relief money came in and kind of saved the fact that we don't have enough money to do the capital needs that we need in that county, right? So I just want to make sure that you understand what this timeline said and what the scope of work. And I want to end this by saying thank you. When I was finance chair, you would be emailing me on Sundays at 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember one time I was on the phone with you. I said, nobody expects you to work until 1 a.m. I know you did it because you care about RPC, you care about the grants, right? Some of the things that I saw in the last year before we moved those staff, we are talking payroll wasn't recorded in the statements that this board gets for 3 months. For 2 years in a row, our public safety sales tax money was double recorded. After all that insanity, when the circuit clerk took almost $600,000 from where we budgeted that revenue was supposed to go and put it in a different fund, and we had hours-long meetings, probably our state's attorney, who left us, the civil side state's attorney, he probably spent weeks of his time coming up with statutorily how should we record that. All I asked the auditor was, can you just make sure that that revenue is getting put in at least like on a quarterly basis where the circuit clerk offered, said that she would put it. Halfway through last year, do you want to know how much money from the fines and fees that she collects was actually applied to the general fund? $0. After, this board, admin, the auditor's office, the treasurer's office spent hours on that process. And afterwards, there was absolutely no reconciliation. Last year, should be rare that we pay bills not in the year that they occur. Usually, if you go back and look every so often on our purchases not following purchases order, there would be 1 or 2, maybe 5 in a year. Last year, we had dozens. There were some months where that part of that report was more than 1 page long. I said to the auditor, what the heck is going on? And he was like, oh, it's all sorts of different departments. I said, yes, you're the auditor. You should come in and you should be telling people, why aren't your bills getting paid on time? Nothing was ever done. So we are in the situation that we're in. I think at the end of the day, we tried. I tried, to the question of what kind of policies and procedures can be put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again. This board would have needed to speak with one voice and say this is not acceptable. And here's what we want done about it. But that didn't happen. And that is why we're here where we are right now. And anybody who says anything differently either literally does not understand what we just saw, or is unable to take any personal responsibility for anything. And I don't know what is worse.
Ms. Addis. So something got me curious, and I think it was a question that got asked by Ms. Rodriguez earlier, which was a comparison of the counties. And I know you said you have a very limited knowledge of different counties and how they run. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, of those other counties that you may have had some experience with, which you said were never this bad at the audit, were any of those other counties, did they have elected auditors or appointed auditors?
I couldn't tell you. One of them, only because I never paid any attention to any of that. For me, it was just a matter of going in, doing the books and the audit. I take a look at Joe Davies County as an example. I don't know what they've got going on up there, but back when I used to do their audit, it was always extremely clean. Very small. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. I will definitely look that up. Thanks.
Yep.
Mr. Varney.
A couple of things. First, when you talk about the fiscal year change, that was actually a request that RPC asked us to do. I was in office when we did that.
Okay.
Because of when you have it on a calendar year, you can match up for their quarterly reports to normal quarters. So we did a 13-month budget for that year, and at the time that was something RPC really wanted, so that got us onto that track there.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I left office December 1st or November 30th of 2017. And so at that time, the big issue that we had that was delaying us was the nursing home. The nursing home was just, we had an outside management company that was not responsive, and getting any information from them, I had hair back then. So, yeah, that was just a little bit of history on some of those things back then. My question for you is, when you were in the office doing the work then, I would have to assume that the elected auditor was your supervisor and you were keeping him up to date on how things were going, and if things weren't going well, they should know about it.
Yep.
Does the elected auditor actually listen when you say that? It just seems like, seeing this timeline of everything, is the guy paying attention to anything?
I communicate it, and then other than that, again, one of the reasons why I got out of that office was just the elected piece of it and the political aspect of it. But I did make sure that George was aware of everything that was going on, the situation with the audits each of those years and why those were delayed. And then other than that, I basically, during my time in office there, I kept my head down and just did the bookkeeping for the most part. Yeah.
Can I follow up with that? So then I guess my question is, for this year, we get to May, we have the checklist that has 47 or 48 items that are not done. Mm-hmm. I'm sure if you had been there, you'd have been sounding the alarms. But the only reason we even found out about that is because the county executive's office was getting involved, because we were like, hey, what's going on with this, and not getting any response. Yeah. Like within the office, when you have that many things that are not done or need to be done, what's the elected auditor's role in any of that?
I think it depends on what you would define their responsibilities as, within their role. I don't really have a good answer for you on that. I think it depends on what the expectation is for the auditor's involvement within doing the work versus expecting others to do the work for him or them. Is it just a matter of, is that official just monitoring and saying, hey, here's what's the status updates, what can you tell me as far as like, these are the open items, how long is it going to take to do each one of these and what's going on with them, versus, I think it depends on, is the auditor going to step in and do some of those items as well?
I guess that leads me, my next kind of train of thought question is, when you're doing the actual nuts and bolts, making entries, things like that, does the elected auditor, when I was in office, I didn't have anything to do with that. Segregation of duties, I needed to not be part of that. We hear from the elected auditor at this meeting often, reminded that he is 3 times a graduate of the University of Illinois and a CPA. Does he do any of the actual CPA work?
So during my stint there in the auditor's office, you had your 2018 audit. Even to run with the little board here, you had 2018 where I didn't have really any involvement at all, and I don't know what his involvement was prior to me getting there. I know he said he did a little bit with like the stats section, which is basically like a few supplemental like back pages with just data at the end of the day. It's just basically like how many. I really, it's kind of hard for me to explain it other than
number
just
of employees,
yes,
number of major businesses in the community. It's statistical things that you basically can find on the internet or by calling people.
Yes,
that was one of my roles in completing the audit.
Yep. So he did a little bit of that for 2018, and then 2019 on, he didn't have any involvement. It was just me working with my staff at the time within that office. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. I'm not going to knock the auditor's staff because a lot of them he was understaffed. A lot were new, still learning the job and whatnot. But I guess the main question everybody's been asking me, and now you don't have a definite answer, maybe Travis can help you, whoever needs to. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with a range on this question, as broad as you want to. When will the 2024 audit be done?
You want to answer that one?
That's the question we're all here for tonight. When will it be done? If you had a guess, just a range is fine.
So CLA has told us, it's actually in my memo that's a handout too, the typical timeline for a county our size and complexity our size is 3 to 4 months. We have asked them to expedite it with additional staff. The issue, and one of the biggest things right now, is them even getting regular staff on there because audits are scheduled 6 to 9 months in advance. So they're working on canceling other clients, rescheduling other clients, pulling people off of field work in order to get a full team on our audit. Until they can get that all settled out, their schedules realigned, they don't have a set timeline for us.
So we're possibly looking after July, the first of the fiscal year for the state. That's a good possibility.
It's possible.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a range because it's very nebulous out there. And I think we need to kind of hammer down a little bit. It's going to be maybe this to this or possibly this to this. And that's where I'm coming. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ms. Carter.
So I guess I'm just kind of confused because all of a sudden now JJ is an expert, but he didn't get reelected in that position. So I'm kind of
Point of order.
But is it unusual for the audit to be late?
I mean, it seemed like the norm when I came to the county that it was.
That you know of even before you came, though? And we got a 30-year board member right here, because that's who I consult with as far as the history. So I want you to just be honest, okay? Has this happened before? Because to me, the way it's being sold is like, oh, only since the auditor has been in this office has it been late. So I'm asking you, have you known this audit to be late prior than this current auditor being in this position?
So, and I can actually speak to some of that. So I can tell you that you had Carol Wadley, I believe was her name. Carol Wadley, she was the one who used to manage your guys' audits all the way up through 2011 or 2012 or something like that. I have to go back and look when she departed. Basically, she'd been here for like almost 20 some odd years though. And during her time, her level of experience, the audits were never late, is what I had gathered. Her predecessor at the time, I gathered, struggled, which is ultimately what led to, your guys' delayed audits here for 2016 and 2017. I don't know circumstances as far as why those audits were late prior to my arrival here. I can just tell you that 2018 was late when I got here, and really all that I knew was that I need to get those select items related to the cash receipts, the counts, or the capital asset stuff to them, and move the audit along. But yeah.
And preparing the audit and getting it done, is it a collaborative effort from everyone in the office, or is it just on the auditor?
It was primarily me doing the audit. I will say, I used like one of our staff who is very proficient in Word documents to help with, back when I redid like all the linking of the statements going from manual to more of an automated system, I had an individual who, she was proficient with Word in a way that we were able to link it all to the Word documents, so that way we could just print the statements at the end of the day and have everything nice and clean and look pretty for us. But I'd say other than that, it was primarily just me working on the stuff. Yeah.
And so then again, like I said, I'm confused because then we went back and hired some of those same employees to continue on the work for the audit for the county. So you just heard it right there that he was the only one. So there's just some things that you just cannot account for the way that this county board has moved, and the reason why we're in the biggest mess probably ever that will be documented in history, because there's been a clash of personalities. And so because of that, they took it upon themselves to totally just disconnect from the auditor's office, and that is the reason why we're here. Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. I'll be brief. So I think a great question was raised in when the last time or how, if it is uncommon for the audit to be late. So I'm wondering, Ms. Hannah Friedman, can you tell me what's on the screen? Like what's on that slide? This is in Robert's rules. I can direct questions to you.
Yes, clearly the presentation tonight showed us that the audit has been late numerous times over the years, since 2018 in particular.
Okay,
Is
thank
that
you
what
so much. Yes, I do
you're
have
asking?
one follow-up one. I know that you're obviously chair of finance here. You pay close attention to communications and questions that are asked of the auditor. It was raised, I think it might be important, that the auditor was understaffed. Can you recall any times where Mr. Danos addressed a lack of staffing, or I believe Mr. Pugh asked him directly if he was understaffed. Is that something that you recall? I know you pay more attention to this than most.
I did say undertrained too. It was
My
new
turn,
people.
thank you.
Is the question whether the auditor addressed his understaffing issues? I can say that what we pretty clearly heard in the presentation this evening, and that I'm also aware of, is that the current auditor has not been able to keep a chief deputy in his office for very long, and that it's the chief deputy who's been doing all of the work. And we've cycled through at least 3 or 4, is my understanding, under the current elected official, which is highly problematic. I could direct a couple of questions to Orion, since you actually worked in that office. I think we've kind of danced around this, but can you just very plainly explain to those who may be listening, why are there so many mistakes? Who was responsible for doing this work and for making sure that our books were in shape to be audited?
Again, the only thing I don't know is what the role of your elected auditor is intended to be there for. I don't work in government other than when I first came over here. But it was always my expectation, I guess, when I stepped in, I quickly realized that it was on me to have to do the work, because I knew that if I didn't do it, then no one else is going to. Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Thorsland.
Yeah, first I want to thank you for coming in. Thank you for putting this presentation together, pro bono. Thank you for all the work you've done for the county. I'm glad and sad that you found another place to be, but somehow you've been magnetically drawn back to this.
Yeah.
I would like to stop putting Orion on the spot to answer what, we know we have a problem. We've done things to fix the problem. We're trying to make it better. We have a problematic office holder. We tried to do something about that. It didn't work. And I'm not defending anyone's poor performance. If I performed as poorly as this particular person did, I would long ago have been a past employee of my employer. But I just want to kind of, if we could just wrap this up, it's a wonderful presentation. We're trying to get things straightened out. I appreciate that some people tried to warn us ahead of time, and it has taken us a while to turn this oil tanker of misery that is the auditor's office into some other direction. And kind of let's move on with other county business now. We're not going to fix this problem, the fundamental problem, until the next election. And we have people that are trying to work to make it better now. And I think that, again, you've put us in have put us in a spot where maybe we have a leg up on some stuff. And I hope you don't have to come back next year. I think Travis and crew are working very hard. And
I told Travis I think this is the last one for me. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm done.
So again, thank you very much. And I know that people want to get into almost like character witness stuff with you and put you on the spot. It's not your job to do it. You seem like a very concise, I want this ledger and this column and this journal to all work, and I, don't want to get into the personalities of it all. So thank you very much.
Okay, let's wrap this portion up then. What? Oh, you have a question for Ryan, or?
No, just a point of clarification. For those who are wondering about the duties of the auditor according to Illinois statute, Chapter 55, Counties 5/3-1005. I'm not going to read it all, it's quite extensive. But if you're interested in looking at the actual duties of the auditor for a county, you can find it there.
Okay, thank you very much, Orion, for everything that you've done for the county and for spending precious time with us tonight to give us all of this history. We appreciate it a lot. Thank you. We're still under the fiscal year audit update. I think Travis already mentioned, but we have the regular written update everyone should have received. It will be posted on the website as well. I think we already discussed the timeline question. It's in this document as well. I'll just reiterate, they've told us typically it takes about 3 months, but we've asked them to speed it up if possible and hire, pull in extra staff, but it's very, very challenging for them. There's one other item in the update that is new on the back page, and I'll let Travis take any questions on this, but because of the late audit, Moody's did just withdraw their bond rating for the county. So we hope that that will get reinstated once the audit is complete, but that also did just happen. Any final questions on the 24 audit? Ms. Vanich, they're not.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, when you say 3 to 4 months to complete the audit, you mean 3 to 4 months after they have received all the information from the county, not 3 or 4 months from the time we first contracted them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any other questions on the audit for Travis? Ms. Carter?
So I'm just trying to figure out, how often are you guys communicating, Ellie and John, with Travis? Are you?
Frequently.
How often?
Frequently, almost daily.
Okay. So when Michelle Jett got the $60,000 wage increase,
Okay, point of order, that has nothing to
Travis
do
We're staying on
with
topic
the
today,
audit.
Ms. Carter.
We're going
Point
to
of order,
move
agenda
on.
item.
Okay, so next on our agenda,
done here.
I'm sorry, you do not have the floor. Next on the agenda, new rules regarding accessibility, Title II of ADA. This is information only. It is in your packet. The sheriff has been very patiently waiting here all night.
I actually have a question about the last one, excuse me.
Oh, about information, the ADA?
Yeah.
Yes?
The guidelines came out in 2024. Why are we doing this now? Why did we wait so long to do this up until the point we're almost reaching the deadline? We got, what, 6, 7 weeks left? We're trying to find a vendor to do this for us? That's ridiculous. We should have been on top of this in 2024 when the guidelines came out. I mean, how much is this going to end up costing us for a last-minute rush? Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have E, Sheriff, number 1. This is information only. There were questions at our last meeting about the personnel expenses and specifically the overtime expenses out of the sheriff's office. So he's provided us with an extremely detailed memo that breaks down where those numbers came from. Are there any questions for him on that memo? Seeing none, let's move on to number 2, amending the number of authorized deputy sheriff positions for the Champaign County Sheriff. Can I get a motion? No, Ares, and second by Lakshan. Discussion. Ms. Ares.
Actually, this is a question for Sheriff Dustin. I was wondering exactly why this is needed and if it pertains at all to the overtime list, and just kind of get clarification on why it's being requested and how it would affect our budget.
Good evening, everyone. So this is a collaboration between the Village of Savoy and the Sheriff's Office. So as you know, likely know, the Sheriff's Office provides 3 deputies that are fully compensated by the Village of Savoy for their police services. We have decided to add a 4th deputy for their police services. Savoy is very much similar to Mahomet, and Mahomet has 15 officers. We do the same thing with 3, soon to be 4. And so this would require another deputy, but it's 100% reimbursed. The county's 100% reimbursed for this position. And so that's really a win-win. We would be responding to the same level of calls for service whether we had that extra deputy or not. This way we just get a little bit of compensation for it as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Ms. Furtado.
Does that reimbursement include SLEP?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Crane.
I don't know if that was the same question. Does that reimbursement include those 4 deputies overtime?
It does. So, well, it would if they are working for Savoy in overtime, which doesn't happen very often. But if it was a callback, like they're on the same list as all the other deputies, we would be paying for that, yes.
Mr. Esri.
Quick question, I think. This would be another deputy that would, granted, maybe not the first person, but another deputy that could be called for some other incident should that deputy be needed anywhere else in the county, correct?
That's correct.
Not that other agencies, all the agencies within the county, they help each other, I know, but still, should something major come up, this would potentially be another person.
Yeah, it is an opportunity for us to use these resources for what we need. Their primary assignment is Savoy. But like I said, if we had calls in Savoy when a deputy's not working, a deputy would have to go anyways. And so this is kind of helping those countywide resources be used better and then focus on Savoy a little more intentionally.
Seeing no other questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, amending passes. And next, sorry? Yeah, it passed. Next, we have authorizing an agreement with Quality Correctional Healthcare for inmate medical and mental health services in Champaign County, Illinois. Can I get a motion? Motion by Esri, second by Wiggs. Any discussion or questions for the sheriff? Ms. Vanich Thernut.
What's the impact of the budget to this new proposal as it stands right now?
So this is a slight increase to the general fund. However, if you recall last May, the county board approved a pilot to where we would do 24/7 nursing coverage. And I took the extra from commissary, from inmate welfare, to make up the rest of that. That costs us about $1.4, $1.5 million a year. This contract here is actually less than what we're currently paying for 24/7 nursing service. And I would not feel comfortable continuing to pay part of it from inmate welfare. I don't think that's appropriate. And so during this pilot, you know, we've taken a look at this 24/7 nursing coverage. Anytime, at least since I've been sheriff in 2018, anytime that we have had an inmate death from a withdrawal or an overdose has been in the middle of the night. That is a time where we do not have nursing service. And I think that what is best for the county and what's best for our inmates is to provide that nursing service whenever they need it the most. And I was actually kind of surprised that the quote was as low as it was. I was really expecting, our current provider, I believe, is $1.5 million to provide the same service as we're working on the contract with the one I'm proposing here for you. And so it really is good. We're still, I'm collaborating with the state's attorney's office. We still got some details to work out whenever it comes to that contract. But their proposal is good, and we've checked references and things. Macon County also has this healthcare provider. And my staff has really done a good job at making sure that this is the best choice moving forward for Champaign County.
Thank you.
Ms. Lockton.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head, and I can go back in the budget and look at this if not, how much of the current services come from commissary versus general?
I believe it's about $300,000 or $400,000. I believe that's completely me thinking off the top of my head.
And according to your memo, we're saving about $400,000 a year. It's about $400,000 less than, sorry, you asked that question.
Projected
the current,
right now.
yeah.
Things could, aren't set in stone. But.
Any other questions or discussion? Ms. Furtado?
Yeah, so never mind.
Anything else you want to add, Sheriff?
I tried, you know my memos, I tried not to overcomplicate it, but I tried to give you guys as much information as you need to make a informed decision on this. I hope I've done that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Ms. Saris?
To that point, not a question, but thank you for looking at this holistically. It looks like in the memo you really characterized it as determining your choice holistically as opposed to for money. So thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of authorizing this agreement signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I have no other business. I have no chair's report, designation of items to be placed on consent agenda. I have A2, A3, A4, and E3.
Thank you.
Back to you.
So the curtain is drawing on my brief but remarkable period of leadership as chair. We are now ready for communications. Mr. Pugh.
I'll yield to Ms. Carter. She had her hand up first.
Okay, Ms. Carter.
So I guess where I'm at, like a lot of other constituents have mentioned to me, that there is lack of communication going on amongst this board. And so for that, I just don't trust our county's finances. I don't. You know, I've watched the bickering with the different employees, and then now that it's in the executive's office, everybody just feels like that is such a bad idea. He just admitted that there's been some doctoring with the HR that's been working on this audit as well. There's too many hands in this pot, and so I just feel like very uncomfortable. I wish that certain board members would grow up and try to work collaboratively with everyone. I think that's what our constituents want us to do. I think this bickering has went way too long, and I'm just hoping moving forward that we can get the job done, what needs to be done, and that's that audit. So I'm just hoping and praying that, you know, we can get to that point. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. Two things. One, real quick. Some of the Democrats here, if you want to get rid of George, should have run somebody against him in the primary. And if nothing else, thanks to Republicans, they did, actually, in the general. Second thing, kind of a little bit of ashamed that we hired the son of our HR manager over qualified individuals. But hey, that's where the county is right now, so buckle up.
Mr. Esri.
A little bit early for the main part of spring farming season, planning to get going, but it has technically already started. There's been field work done, mainly anhydrous application, which is the nitrogen for corn. So start thinking about that and being aware when and if you're out driving in the country, especially on nice days. Thanks.
Dorsland.
Jeff Wilson isn't here, so I felt it necessary to find some event of significance for today. In 1982, the planets all lined up on one side of the sun. People predicted tides would change, there would be earthquakes, and the world would basically come to an end. Obviously, that didn't happen. Which brings us to what's going on now. We have 7 dead U.S. soldiers in the not a war that was started not that long ago, since our last meeting. 140 soldiers injured. Tragically, 168 people dead at a school for girls in Iran, which people will say was not our fault, but of course it was. We started the war. It's costing $1 billion a day. They're putting mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Aaron talks about the farmers, the fuel and the fertilizer that comes through that strait at the worst possible time is being delayed or diverted or it won't come. We're going to see a big impact that will last a long time, and we need to really think about this when we approach the midterms, who we're going to support. And on that, mail your ballot if you really insist on mailing your mail-in ballot now, because the post office has changed the rules. Don't mail it on the last day. It will not be postmarked on the last day. Better yet, we have yellow boxes all around the county. Put it in there, save us the postage, and make sure your vote counts.
Come one, come all. Seeing it, no one else, so we are now on to other business. So this is a reminder that on March 24th, 2026, we are hosting a study session regarding the Open Meetings Act and FOIA, so Freedom of Information Act. We encourage everyone to attend. It can be a really helpful reminder, particularly how we use our phones and emails, that sort of things.